NERDSoul.
Frame data is not fair. Here's why. Call me an old man if you want to. I don't care. It doesn't hurt my feelings. But I come from the arcade era where you had to put your quarter in the machine. Those machines did not have a pause menu or start menu or even a practice mode where you can go and manipulate the frame
Your
data.
practice was a quarter.
Your practice was a quarter, right? And hold on, I'm going to take you a step further. Even when home consoles came into play where you can, well, I ain't going to say came into play because Atari was a home console. When it got to a point where certain arcade games made it to home consoles, right? Because home consoles were there, but certain games couldn't be condensed or dumbed down for the home console at times. So when you finally got Street Fighter and Neo Geo and all those World Hero, all those little games that you played at the arcade, when they finally came home, the graphics were a little bad, and the actual movement and the actual game itself was a little bit watered down versus the arcade version. Yes,
true,
but you still didn't have a practice mode. We didn't get practice mode in games until like the PlayStation 1, like the first PlayStation.
Yeah, I don't think we had.
We didn't have.
I don't think we
mode.
had like practice and stuff or like training mode and like
we didn't have a training mode until PlayStation 1.
2 turbo hyper fighting and 2 turbo extra good and 2 turbo super people.
Now listen, mind you, we had Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. We had Nintendo 64, right? The fighting games that came out on those systems didn't have a practice mode. Or I take it back. It had a practice mode, but it didn't have the frame data in the practice mode. That's right, because I'm losing my memory. They gave us practice mode like in Nintendo 64 era, right? So you had Nintendo 64, then you had Sega CD, right? Sega CD and Nintendo 64 was the PlayStation and Xbox of that time. Those were the two consoles that had the day. It was N64, Sega CD. Those were the two 64-bit systems. Okay, there was a practice mode, but it didn't have frame data. You couldn't go to a menu that gave you the frame data of this punch and this kick and this movement, wherever you're trying to do. You could just go to practice mode and practice your little combo. Do your little button inputs, the character dummy never dies, and you could just keep pressing buttons. And then, as it evolved, we get PlayStation, we get Tekken 1 and Tekken 2, and then these new games. They give you practice mode, and they give you this little menu that you've never heard of before called frame data. What's this? And you start playing with the frame data. You're like, oh, so when I press this punch button, it says 2 frames. What does 2 frames mean? You start teaching yourself. It's not like you had like an owner's manual that taught you frame data. You just got a game and you open up and you went to practice mode and you start fiddling with the menus and you started self-teaching. Okay, so here's how that came into play. The community begged and cried and whined about it. And a fear of losing customer dollars, they gave us frame data in our games. Now it's standard. Here's what that does now. Everybody who's a pro player now has to question their pro skill, because if you had access to the frame data, you can now cheat and use that information to beat your opponent who maybe doesn't study or even care about frame data. But if you didn't have that data, let's say, because I argue with people, heated arguments about frame data in fighting games. If you don't know the frame data, you're never gonna be good. That is their philosophy. They live and die by frame data, right? But here's my, I'm finna bury y'all. Even if you are a pro, even if you've won a major, I'm burying you too. Here's why I'm finna bury you with the facts, though, not my opinion. Because people can argue with your opinion. You can't argue with the facts. The facts are this. Before you had access to frame data, there were pro players. There were pro players who won majors on arcade machines with quarters. They did not have frame data. They didn't even have practice modes. They just spent a lot of quarters in arcades. They would get their paychecks and put aside $10 in quarters and go to the arcade specifically to spend all $10 of those quarters practicing, losing, winning. It wasn't about the lose or win rate. It was about learning this character because they're preparing for an up and coming tournament that's going to be utilizing arcade cabinets. So let me go to the local laundromat up the street from my house and make sure I got $10 in quarters every day or every week. People had jobs, they had lives, but they would put them quarters aside and collect them and use them specifically to play that game, to practice for the major. Those pros are authentic pros. Those are the Michael Jordans of the world, the legends, the GOATs. Those guys who are my age and older did not have access to the frame data. So now that you fast forward to the now, okay, you got access to the frame data. So now you've used that 13 frames, 5 frames, 2 frames, 1 frame, half a frame, negative frames, all these frames. You're using that information and you're saying, yeah, I'm good because I know the frame data. But you just told on yourself. You're good because you know the frame data. What if you didn't know or have access to the frame data? Yeah. How good can you really be? Because I'm gonna tell y'all right now, even in this day and age, I don't know the frame data for Tekken, for Street Fighter, for DNF Duel, for none of these, for Dragon Ball Z. I beat Punk twice on Dragon Ball Z, no frame data. I beat LTG, no frame data. I'm Still the Daddy over there in Europe, no frame data. Beat Lil Majin, no frame data. All these people know the frame data. I don't. What I do know is how to press those buttons. And it ain't about just mashing buttons, mashing frantically. It's about the feel of the game. You played Street Fighter 6, you felt it. Whether you liked it or not, you felt it. You know how Street Fighter 6 feels. So now from going forward, when you see clips up until it comes out, you're gonna hearken yourself mentally back to when you touched it. At least you know what that felt like. You can see and feel the jump, the kick, the punch, the grab, the throw. You know what it feels like. So now you have more of an understanding of the clips when they come out. Where the rest of us are just looking at ooh and ah. We don't know what's going on because we haven't felt it yet. So in other words, looking at it for you, for the rest of us, we're still in the dark. But for you, until the rest of us get a chance to, you're going to see clips from Street Fighter 6 going forward, and you're going to understand what's happening, if nothing else. This isn't about you liking the game. This is just understanding the game. You know definitively what Street Fighter 6 feels like because you touched it. You felt it. That is what fighting games is. You got to feel that punch. You got to feel that kick, that fireball, that command grab, whatever is going on. You have to feel the vibration in the fight. You got to get countered. You got to get dodged. Whatever happens to you, win or lose, that is how you learn how to play fighting games. There is frame data it's there. Use it if you must. But if that's what you're going off, if that's where you grab and pull your skill from, the knowledge of the frame data, you are a fraud.
Well, I'll take it a step further.
Wait.
You now have to question, like, pretty much everyone's choice, because by and large, people are getting a game, opening it up, and just being like, okay, who has the best frame data? All right, cool. Right. That's the character I'm playing.
Right, that's whack, bro. That's whack. To me, that's whack. If the FGC Pro, I don't care who you is, if that's what you do. Now, mind you, this is opinion. What I'm about to say, this is opinion. You are allowed to do whatever you want to do with your money when you spend it. And of course, the devs give us the frame data, right? So it's not against any law. It's not a crime, so to speak, to use frame data. But I'm telling you that the only reason you have access to it is because consumers complained to these companies and they were afraid they were going to lose money by selling you a copy of it, because you don't have access to frame data in arcade cabinets. You don't have it. And that's for a reason. You got a joystick and buttons. That's it. And a quarter. You do not have access to the frame data, but you're still supposed to stand there and win that championship. So therefore, if that's what we had to do to win, you could go home and look at your frame data all you want to. You cheating. it's in other words, they don't let you open up that menu at the tournament, but you can go home and open up that menu at your home. Why is it banned from tournaments if it's not? You know what I'm saying? Why can't we stop and pause in the middle of the match and look at the frame data? Hold on, bro. Before we start, let me pause and look at the frame data real quick. You know why you can't do that? Because it's illegal. You can't even
be like, nah, man, I want to change my character. You got better frame data than I do.
There are rules. Why are these rules there? Why? Because there's a level of unfairness. They would not make up a rule if they didn't feel like there was a level of unfairness to even create the rule in the first place. Because otherwise you'd be able to do it. You notice nobody, nowhere is allowed to even press pause during the fight. All right, fight.
Yep. You press pause,
The
you
fight is
immediately DQ.
Soon as you hit the pause button in a fight, and I'm talking about right now, Evo, disqualified. Even if you accidentally hit it because you mashing and you fighting, your thumb graze over that button, you hit the pause menu, you disqualified.
Man, that pause, if that game stopped for any reason.
So if you can't even open up the menu at the damn tournament, how is it okay for you to go home and open up your menu and cheat and learn the frame data? Now, it's not cheating. It's basically you basically, when the devs is creating the game, all you really doing is by having access to that information, frame data, the devs had to use that information to create and design the character. That's what y'all don't get. Y'all keep talking about frame data, frame data, frame data. The frame data is not there for you to learn how to use the character. It's there for them to understand the math behind creating characters inside computers, because computers talk with numbers. Computer language
There's
is
zeros and ones.
And ones. So the frame data is for the computer and the software to recognize that character. It has nothing to do with your skill as a character. You. It's not for you. It's for the dev to create and design. Okay, this character's punch is 4 frames. I need to dial it back 3 frames. All it is to tell the dev who's creating the character what the avatar is doing right or wrong, so that they can visualize it and kind of speed up the process of fixing any bugs in the character. That's the purpose of frame data. It's there for the devs to develop and fix. That's why they gave you access to it, because you, the consumer, complained, whined, and cried about it decades ago. Now we have it as a standard in fighting games. But because I know this history, and a lot of people don't, they just pick up fighting games and start mashing buttons, and then they follow their favorite YouTuber or favorite pro player who says it, and they assume that this is the standard. And I'm here to set the record straight. Even if it's a pro, if you come across this video and you hear me talking, I'm talking to you. I don't care how big your following is. I'm telling you, you wrong. Frame data is not for you to get good with your character. It's there for the dev as they design the character. That's it. The
trip is, as someone who was into fighting games and like left, and I went into like Gears of War, Halo, Killzone, stuff like that, Rainbow Six, and when I came back to fighting games, I remember, like, when I first came back, I picked up Fighters, and I picked up Street Fighter 5, and a friend of mine was talking about, that character is bad because they're negative on block, and then this, and I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
negative on block, plus on block, like all these. I was like, what is this? Y'all don't make video games. Why y'all talking like y'all developing the game? You play games. You don't make them, but your voice, your lingo is plus on block, negative on block, minus plus, plus minus. That is how devs talk to each other. They don't understand. The devs sit there and laugh at y'all. They don't have a following. They're just devs. They don't have a following, but they laugh at people who sit up there and talk frame data. You know how the fight FGC got its own language. Yeah. Devs talk to each other like that, not necessarily in code, but more like a lingo, like radio. Yeah. People who work in the industry, radio industry, have a lingo. Construction workers have a lingo. Every industry has a lingo. The lingo is for the devs, not for us in the FGC. But we took it and robbed them, and now it's plus block, plus minus block, negative on block, and 5 frames, 10 frames, all these frames and all these references to frame data when we talk in the FGC, all of that was taken from a private conversation with devs. But y'all don't know the history, and it's been run rampant. Now it's like, well, yeah, frame data is the most important thing. If you don't know the frame data, then you're not going to be good. No, idiot. It's only there because consumers complained and cried about it. So all companies make it an industry standard now to give frame data in practice mode. But really, the purpose of frame data is for the devs. It's so that they can go into that menu and turn that character red or green so that they can see the skeleton, so that they can fix any problem. If the frame data is 4 frames and it's supposed to be 3, they can see, well, it's 4 frames. Well, now we can dial it back 1 frame so that they don't overdo it or do it too much. The numbers are there to guide them. It's a guide for them so that they can tweak these characters when the characters have bugs in them. Games have bugs, and they got to fix these bugs. So they use the frame data so that they can inform themselves, the dev, what do I need to fix? What's broke? Oh, here's the frames right here. These frames are off. Let me fix that. See, you can see you the player, you can see the frame, but you can't manipulate the frame. You can't change the frame. Why is that? Why is it you, the player who buys this game, you cried and complained as a consumer about having the frame data, but for some reason you can't go in there and make that frame 4, frame 6. How come you can't open up that menu and tell the character to do it in 2 frames? Why don't you have that power? You know why? Because there's a level of unfairness. It's already unfair that you can even see the frame. Then you want access to control the frame. See, that's the thing. Consumers, it's called pay to play. That's what it is. Pay to play. Whoever got the most money can have the most influence. Therefore, they change and decide the culture. Are you actually godlike, or do you just have more money than somebody else? Because you can influence some stuff. Because you can't change the frame data on the character that you're using. And that's for a reason. You're not supposed to have it anyway, but since you have it, you're going to use that and you're going to go win the tournament with that. The fact that that's even
because
allowed,
what they'll
to me,
do
is
is end up basically just saying, okay, well, what 2 or 3 characters have the best overall,
right,
frame or whatever?